most interesting people to ever come onto television is Tim Bakker and Tammy Faye herself. Well, now we have a movie starring Andrew Garfield and Jessica Chastain. Is it any good? Let's talk about it. What's going on, buddy? Welcome back to a brand new movie review. Today we're discussing The Eyes of Tammy Faye, once again starring the likes of Andrew Garfield, Jessica Chastain, and Vincent D'Onofrio. It also is directed by Michael Showalter, who I'm a pretty big fan of because he directed one of my favorite films from a couple years back called The Big Sick, which I adore. This is, of course, the intimate look at the extraordinary rise, fall, and redemption of Tammy Faye Bakker herself. Now, if you don't know who Tammy Faye is, this is a very, again, interesting TV person out there. She's a very religious, she's sadly passed away, but I implore you, if you are interested in this story, to definitely look up the documentary, but also just look up the entirety of her life and kind of do your own history to it. Because as much as I enjoyed this movie, I didn't know much going into this about Tammy Faye or her husband at all. I knew that they had done some bad things and some things had gone on, mostly on her husband's side, at least within what this movie says. And I actually had to do some deep diving after the movie was over for me to kind of learn a little bit more. Now, I got a lot of thoughts, and I'm really curious to hear your guys' thoughts, so make sure to comment down below and let me know. Are you guys excited for this movie? Do you know anything about Tammy Bakker herself? And hit that like and subscribe button so we can keep talking movies over here on a daily basis. This is my favorite place to be, is talking movies with you. So if you're feeling the same way, then you're in the right spot. Let's get my major pro out of the way, and it's flat out Jessica Chastain, who absolutely transforms into Tammy Faye herself. From the first screen, like literally from the first scene of her to the very last, I never once saw Jessica Chastain. And maybe you can give a lot of props to the makeup artist in here, but seriously, like, besides the makeup and the costume design, all that, because all that's just flat out awesome and brilliant, her performance is probably one of her best. I mean, she literally chameleonizes herself into the role of Tammy Faye to the point you look at her and you're like, yeah, that's exactly Tammy Faye. From the voice to the movements to the acting, it is bravo and one of the best performances of this year. I loved Jessica Chastain in here. And let's talk about Andrew Garfield. I think he's been one of the more underrated actors pretty much always in Hollywood. When he comes into a role, I get pretty excited, and he blows it out of the park in here as Jim Bakker. I will say with the makeup on him, though, I don't know what it is. Like, Jessica Chastain, I could not see her under that makeup whatsoever. With him, it was a little bit more clear and obvious, and sometimes it make him look a little bit older than he actually is, and it didn't really work that well for me. I'm not totally bagging on the makeup. I think there's just certain elements that's a little bit hard to do since it's Andrew Garfield. Is a more prevalent name out there. Take that away, though. Again, his performance is great, and their relationship, their chemistry, this divide and conquer that they have. I don't want to get into too many spoilers if you don't know really much anything about them or in general Tammy Faye, but there are some interesting dynamics between them that I actually wish the film would have explored a little bit more, because the elements that we got of it I thought were awesome. And let's talk about that, because that one little thing that I said, exploring. There is one big con I have to this film that left me leaving the movie feeling a little bit underwhelmed. I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the dramatic avenues. I even enjoyed the directing and some of the stylistic choices that they had in here that I actually thought were quite brilliant. Really much. This is a greatly made movie. But there's one thing that I think holds this movie back, and it is the story itself. The story is very interesting when you look on it, an entire concept, and Tammy Faye herself, and give credit where credit is due, it's not mocking her at all, and it easily could have done that. It easily could have been a satire on these two, but it's not. It gives a lot of respect to the material and in general the people that are involved with the entire story, especially Tammy Faye herself, and I have to give mad respect to that. But I was underwhelmed when it came down to the entire concept and the story and the storytelling, because for a 2-hour movie, it feels slow in its pacing. It starts very slow, starts to pick up towards the end, but then feels rushed at the end of the movie to the point where you're sitting there and you're like, okay, well, I feel like you could have expanded more on here, here, and here, and it would have made the ending a little bit more satisfying. And even with that, it feels like it montages throughout Tammy Faye's life. And for me, I'm not a big fan of when movies montage and give you here, there, we're going to go to this year and this year. Some movies can do it well. Not every movie can do it great, though. And I don't think Tammy Faye executed that completely well, and I think the script may have been held back from that. When I look at the editing, I feel like it's easy to follow, but I really do think that maybe either things were cut out completely, or this is a movie that just needed more time to marinate. A 2.5-hour movie of Tammy Faye maybe would have been a little bit stronger. Or maybe if you even look at a mini series where you give each episode like an hour-long series where you can explore her life a little bit more in all the different avenues, I think it would have really much been a more touching homage to her as a person, because she did do great things for some communities. And again, don't want to get into spoilers, but from what I was watching in this movie, you got to give respect to where credit is due with her. She's not perfect. None of us are. But really much, I just felt underwhelmed leaving the theater, because it didn't feel like it niched all the way together. And again, felt underwhelming moving from point A to point B to point C to point D. And I definitely needed a little bit more in there. Taking that away, though, this is a greatly made movie. The directing is solid. I actually really like some of the cinematography and stylish choices. I think when it comes down to Michael's showtelling, this is probably his best sequences when it comes down to a directing style. Even if I don't love how he was able to tell the story in here, I really dug how he was able to frame Tammy Faye herself in certain moments in here. I think they brought this story to life in a really cool way. Now, if you're more attached to Tammy Faye and in general that story and that icon, you grew up with that, I think you might like this movie a little bit more than me. But as someone who's not that close to the material, and again, was not alive during a lot of that, it definitely needed to develop and marinate a little bit more for me than just feeling like a montage. But honestly, though, The Eyes of Tammy Faye is an entertaining drama. It's one that features one of the best performances of the year within Jessica Chastain. And I'm really curious to hear if you guys all think that same way, or if you guys actually think the makeup and her performance got a little bit distracting. I don't. I think she played Tammy Faye to perfection, and as well as Andrew Garfield as her husband, who also was great as well. This is a movie that I found, again, entertaining as a drama, a little bit underdeveloped when it comes down to the entire story overall, but I think if you go out and see this one, you're going to be like, yeah, I remember this, or yeah, I know this, and maybe if you've never even heard the story, it's going to intrigue you to kind of dive into a little bit more. There's a documentary out there, there's a lot of articles and everything that you can read, but The Eyes of Tammy Faye is a good movie, a greatly directed movie as well, with great performances, but an underdeveloped story that I think deserves a little bit more time to marinate. So with all that said, I'm going to give The Eyes of Tammy Faye a B-. Thank you once again, guys, for clicking on this. You guys are seriously all the best. I cannot wait to hear your guys' thoughts on this one. If you guys disagree with me, if you agree with me, if we completely just are on two opposite spectrums, this is going to be a great discussion. Let's have those great comments down below. And if you guys are interested in seeing movies early, head on over to Sandwich on Films on how to see all those movies. And of course, just a big thank you to you and a big thank you to my Patreon supporters, because without you, I would not be able to do this. So of course, until next time, stay classy.